Hello and welcome to episode 71 of Meet the Farmers. I'm your host Ben Eagle and it's another packed show today. I'll be speaking to Yorkshire arable farmer Andrew Wilson in Farmer Focus, and that will be followed by a conversation with Nicola Palfrey in a new feature called Meet the Young Farmer. First though, let's take a look at the news from the past week. In the news this week, the Wool Marketing Board admitted a slump in demand for wool had left one-third of the 2019 clip unsold. Prices have plummeted this year, mostly due to coronavirus and China, the biggest processor and consumer of wool, being hit heavily by it. The HDB and Dairy UK has joined forces with DEFRA and the devolved governments for a 12-week £1 million promotional campaign which goes live this week. It will mainly focus on tea, coffee and milk-based drinks. A hardship fund has been made available for Welsh dairy farmers. The Welsh Government has confirmed that farmers who have lost more than 25% of their income in April and May would be entitled for up to £10,000 to cover 70% of their lost income. And finally, the Agriculture Bill is set for its report stage in the House of Commons on Wednesday, the 13th of May. This is the final stage in the Commons and therefore the last opportunity for MPs to amend the bill before it passes over to the House of Lords for consideration. And that is the news for now. In the news. Now it's time for Farmer Focus, and last week I spoke to Yorkshire arable farmer Andrew Wilson.
It's Farmer Focus.
It's time for Farmer Focus now, and I'm really pleased to be heading up to God's own county this morning, up to Yorkshire. And on the line today, I'm speaking to arable farmer Andrew Wilson, who farms near Slingsby. Good morning, Andrew. How are you doing? Welcome to the podcast. Thanks for coming on.
Morning, Ben. Thank you very much. I know that was some nervousness, but here we go.
I'll be kind, honestly. No. I mean, firstly, what's the corona picture like up in your part of the world?
We're probably in a low risk sector as things go. We used to be covered in muck and blather, so our immune systems are probably slightly better than the average, perhaps. We've just finished potato planting last week, where it's not too difficult to do one man, one tractor. Forklifts are another matter entirely, so we've all been gloving up to drive the forklifts. It's challenging getting deliveries. We have to think a lot further ahead than maybe we did before. It hasn't affected us too badly just as yet. With one casual guy has had to be isolated because a member of his family's been affected.
Okay.
But we've got off quite lightly, I suppose, compared to some.
Yeah. Tell me about your part of Yorkshire and your part of the world generally for listeners who don't know it.
Well, there's nowhere else in the world I would rather live for a start.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, I'm bound to do, aren't I? We're on the western side of Rydale district in North Yorkshire. Beautiful part of the world. We're tenant farmers of Castlehoward Estate. You look on Google Maps at Castlehoward Estate and look north a little bit, and that's where we are. That gives you a good picture of the local area, but it's quite green and leafy, although we could do some rain at the moment.
Yeah, and you're farming a little bit north of the actual village itself, aren't you?
We're about half a mile. I've been doing some research.
I have. Do my sneaking.
We're about half a mile north of Slingsby, yes.
Okay. So you've got family farming heritage in the area, obviously, big time. I mean, how long's your family been farming there, and how's the farm changed since you were young?
The farm has changed quite a lot. I'm a fourth generation tenant of Castlehoward Estate. We're on the third farm on my side of the family. In 1989, we came to Brickyard Farm where we are now. That was due to the previous farm that we're at, Porch Farm in Slingsby, is now houses. The estate were having a bit of a reorganisation. We had houses on three sides and a road on the other. We're to be very quiet. It was only really going to go one way. There wasn't much potential for the future there, and they moved us to a farm on the northern boundary of the estate, which was the best thing that could ever possibly have happened to us. It's allowed things to grow gradually as time's gone on. It's 30 years has flown past. Where we are today, I'm fortunate enough to have succeeded my father as tenant on the place. But yeah, things have changed quite a lot from when I was a kid with 120 acres and surrounded by houses.
Blimey.
And now the job's grown quite a bit now, really.
Now, I know you're mostly a potatoes man. And potatoes are your thing, but you're also growing sugar beets and cereals. What's your typical rotation?
Well, on the heavy land, none of the root crops feature. We're two wheats, winter beans, 2 wheats, spring oats. We grow a cover crop before the spring oats, and that's usually where the muck goes as well. We direct drilling a little bit more on that, particularly on that land, than we used to do. We direct drilling the oats and the beans, usually the wheat after the beans, and as soil improves, gradually that'll become more prevalent, I think. On the lighter land, potatoes followed by wheat. And then it's usually winter barley, because that allows us an early start to get a cover crop in, get some muck on, following to sugar beet. After sugar beet, we've recently started growing seed oats, because it's a clean start for a seed crop. After the winter that we've had, we looked at other options, what we're going to have far too much spring barley, what we're going to do, and it's fitting in quite nicely. The numbers make a little bit of sense, so I think that's something that we'll continue to do. The spring barley used to sit in that slot, but it can get a little bit stretched at times. Sugar beet would grow no closer than 1 in 4, and potatoes try not to grow more than 1 in 8. After the oats will be wheat, probably barley after that, cover crop into potatoes.
And you're sending your beet to Newark, Ursine?
We are, yeah. It's a bit of a trek, but provided we can get the crop to yield, we can make it make sense. The yields, the 5-year average continues to grow, which is pleasing. There are odd blips in seasons like 2010 when it was -15 for a fortnight. That kind of kicks the $7 out of the performance figures. But it's quite a consistent crop, so consistency reduces risk. Potatoes don't really fit that mantle, but sugar beet does. Spring malting barley after beet has done in the past. Wheat after beans is consistently good. So we'll try and do what we do well, and we stopped growing L-seed rape in 2010 because I was a very poor rape grower. We had a lot more potatoes than oilseed rape, and all the attention to detail was going on the spuds, and the rape needs the attention to detail to be successful. So if I ain't any good at it, we ain't doing it. So you won't find any sheep on this farm. My sheep, anyway. You might find somebody else's grazing something, but you won't find any of mine.
But you have had pigs for quite a while.
As I said, we don't follow fashion. We've been bed and breakfast pigs since 1990. Long before it became fashionable. We've had 1,200 pigs since then, and I'm currently waiting for planning permission to be passed. Ever hopeful, eternal optimist that we're going to put up another shed for another 800 pigs, and that's a sustainability thing, and it's a consistency thing as well, because it's not market related, it's not weather related. It turns straw into muck, and it doesn't make a fortune, but it does make sense. Yeah,
it's part of your system as a whole.
Absolutely, yeah. The muck is very important on the farm. That when I compare yields to other farms, particularly in dry years, you can see the benefit of the muck.
Tell me a bit about your dad and the kind of guy he was, and how he inspired you.
Dad inspired me in many ways, particularly his work ethic and his way of spotting what needed to be done and the attention to detail. He's very passionate about farming and about transport. And he gave things his all, and I drew a lot from that. When we first came here, I was 12 years old, and going on 13, and I was keen, and he was keen. And because we had virtually a trebling of area overnight, virtually, there was no brass. So consequently, Junior, who was as keen as mustard, got plonked on a tractor and loved it. I spent many a day powering in a Ford 5.6 with some warm, dusty air in Atlantic 252 for company in the early 90s, and I would do it all again tomorrow. So yeah, I was very, very fortunate to have the start I wanted, and my enthusiasm has never waned. And Father said to me in his latter days, he said, "It might be harder for you than it was for me." I thought, I don't disagree with you, but why do you say that? And he said, "Well, I never had to contemplate taking my foot off pedal because I said, you take it behind me." He said, "You might not be quite looking." And that's not particularly a reflection of my daughters. It's more a reflection of the times that we're in and opportunities that may or may not arise. The world's a very different place to what it was when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But things that do follow along the common denominator, attention to detail always makes sense. And if you're passionate about something, you'll find a way of making it work.
Tell me about your year so far, because it's no story to say that everyone's had a bit of an up and down one this time. Not to mention the weather, apart from anything else. What are the headlines up with you this year?
It's a proper red herring this year, isn't it?
It really is.
It's one of them years that we'll remember for all the wrong reasons. It'll be like 2012 when it never seemed to stop raining. But 19 wasn't much different. Potato harvesting dragged out forever and a day last back end. We had a frantic week the first week of February harvesting potatoes, and thank God we did. We shoveled 600 tonne of spuds up that week and 600 tonne of sugar beet and drilled 40 odd acre of wheat. In 6 days with
That's a lot of work.
It was busy. It was very, very busy. For the rest of February, it never stopped raining.
Yeah.
We had just shy of 7 inches of rain from the Saturday night when we pulled the stop. For 3 weeks after, we had 7 inches of rain.
Blimey.
We went back to we had 2.5 acre, frustratingly, of spuds we couldn't get. We couldn't make things float. Try as we might, we couldn't get. We were determined that to finish that last field. We'd completed every other field we'd been in for the previous week. And we were determined to get them out, but it wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
We went back to get them the last week of March, I think, before we started planting. No. It was still like sludge underneath and concrete on the surface. We had to leave them. So if we hadn't had that busy week at the beginning of February, we'd have a lot more in that position. We'd have been much worse off financially as well than we are now. Certainly what we lifted, that 600 tonne made the cash flow forecast look a lot better. Spring drilling, once it dried up very, very quickly. And we're to pick and choose with lots of different systems. Some with plough, some with direct drill, some with min-till. So we've quite a lot of different ways of doing things. And it was a bit of a field by field basis. Cropping plan changed 4 or 5 times.
Wow.
Most of it affected by the weather. There was winter wheat where winter barley should have been. There's various other little quirks to the system. Some spring oats finished up being spring barley for various different reasons. But we got there in the end. Some things at the present moment look okay, and some things look, why the hell did I drill that? But, an inch of rain will make things look much different, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But, very challenging. We haven't done much in the way of frost, which has to some extent saved us with the spuds that we lifted in February. But it hasn't killed off many bugs and it hasn't done much cultivating. So we've had to really keep the eye on the ball for cultivating potato and sugar beet seed beds to stop things going hard on us, because by hell it was drying fast when those cold easterly winds were on.
Oh yeah.
And the sun was out as well. You could see moisture leaving the field.
Yeah.
So it was almost plant up to the plough at night, which is unusual for planting. We've done it before, but not for a long time.
Tell me about your trials work and some of the trials you've been doing over the last few years.
We've been in trials for quite a long time, really. It's sort of a diversification with a little d. Well, I always take the view that there's always a better way. Whatever we're doing, there's always a better way, and trials is a good way of learning what those ways might be. Sometimes you learn what not to do, but that's just as valuable at times.
Yep.
The peak of it of trials, I suppose, and the most we did was 2013 when we hosted, which is probably what you've seen on YouTube.
Yeah.
Of the AHDB potatoes. Well, before, I think it was a Potato Council back then. I can't remember.
It was Potato Council, yeah.
Yeah, that dates it, doesn't it? I've probably put a bit of timber on since then. But what you'd see in those videos is actually quite a lot different to how we do it. In fact, very different now to how we do it now. And that was it was something I hosted. It grew from a couple of small potato trials the year before. It was just about replicated in Lancashire, all the different subjects that they're focused on, and that became what's now the Spot Farms. So I like to think I've done my bit along the way. I quite enjoyed it. It was quite challenging. There's a lot of hard work in that job. We do learn a lot about it, and some things that we learned through that trial process we're still doing now. That's quite good. And we do various things for local trials companies and some bigger chemical firms as well, although much less this year with this corona thing that's on.
Yeah, I can. That was actually my next question, is how corona is actually affecting trials work.
Massively. We've won one trial this year. We had 6 last year.
Wow.
So as a percentage, that puts it into focus, doesn't it? Really, I mean, we do. You could call it trials. So you can put some white sticks in, and it covers a few comedy tramlines. Not that I would dream of doing that. Obviously, it's all for the neighbours' entertainment and bewilderment as to what the hell Wilson's up to now. But we do try things ourselves, be that row widths or different fertiliser ways of applying the same amount of fertiliser. There's always things that we keep experimenting in, and sometimes you think, well, that was a daft idea. And sometimes you think, why did I do that sooner? But there's no substitute for trying it on your own place.
Yeah, and like you say, there's value in anything, isn't there? Even if it comes out with the conclusion that you didn't think was going to happen.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've never been on somebody else's farm yet and not learned something. And we keep trying to do things differently and better here. And when you compare, sometimes you think you're on a bit of a treadmill, but you look back 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, how we did things back then and compare it to today and take some satisfaction that we are slowly improving things as we go.
Yeah. Tell me about the Future Farmers of Yorkshire group and how you got involved in that.
Tremendous organisation. I'm one of the longest serving, certainly. When I joined, there was 30 of us in, I think, 2010, and now there's over 1,000.
Amazing.
Yeah, fantastic. It set off from two groups of old young farmers as I was then. I was Yorkshire County Chairman 2008-9. And when you've been on NYFC all that time, because I was 33 going on when I retired as County Chairman, quite old really in farmer circles. Yeah. You get used to a certain social scene and interaction with other people, and you learn stuff, and as a wise man told me many years ago, you're going to get off farm every now and again, lad. You should stop at home till you know now. Very, very true words. Future Farmers is a very good way of meeting people and learning things. And you learn things that you maybe didn't necessarily thought you needed to learn. Yeah. You didn't realise the subject, or you didn't realise the breadth of things like succession and dealing with challenges as go on, because everything changes quite quickly. But there's always people that have been there before. There's different viewpoints and ways of looking at things that help you be more resilient, I suppose. I've been on the committee for quite a while now of the Future Farmers, and I'm very, very proud to serve that committee. And have a bit of input into it. And you listen to what other people think, and people that are probably 10 or 15 years younger than me, how they're thinking, and compare that to me at the same age. And equally speak to people that are quite a bit older than me and get their viewpoint on things as well. And that forms part of the programme. Yeah. The target technically is 26 to 46. It sets off as sort of 20 years after YFC. Okay. But there's people from 18 to 80 go to those meetings, and they all bring things to the meeting. So it's certainly not enforced, isn't the age thing.
Yeah, that sounds brilliant. I mean, if there is a listener in Yorkshire who wants to get involved, how do they find out more?
If you look on any of the social media challenges for Future Farmers of Yorkshire, you'll find us. That's probably the easiest way of doing it. We're supported and funded to a large extent by the Yorkshire Agricultural Society, without whom it wouldn't be what it is. I must mention the efforts, considerable efforts of Liz Hudson, that's basically made Future Farmers what it is today. It's run by the members for the members, but the lady that ties it all together is Liz, and she's fantastic.
Grand. And finally, before we go, if you had one message for the great British public at the moment, what would it be and why?
Good question. If you're not sure, ask. There's a lot of assuming and guessing goes on, particularly on social media, from people that see different things to what farmers see, and they're not perhaps understanding totally what we're doing. We'll always talk to you. Don't be afraid of giving us a ring, dropping us an email, asking questions rather than making assumptions. Things change from year to year, and there's always lots of learning that can be done, and understand where your food comes from. We have a fantastic agricultural industry in this country, producing some fantastically high quality food. And to some people, milk comes in bottles from a supermarket. It doesn't come from cows in a field. They're them things that belch a lot and destroy the planet. Strangely, CO2 has dropped massively, but cow numbers are still the same. Draw your own conclusions on that one. But yeah, if you're not sure, ask really. Be proud to eat British food. Consider your food miles. Food miles to me, buy local, particularly. If you don't buy British, buy local. I suppose that does dictate British to a large extent. But local and seasonal will do a lot of good.
I think that's a great message to end it on. But Andrew, thanks so much for coming on the show. It's been brilliant talking to you, and good luck for your inspections.
Pleasure. I look forward to it with glee.
Cheers.
Thank you, Dan.
It's Farmer Focus.
Andrew Wilson there. And if you want to hear the full version of that interview, you can find it on YouTube. Just search for Meet the Farmers Podcast. I wanted to start a new feature on the show, profiling younger farmers and members of young farmers clubs all over the country, looking at what they're doing and the issues that matter for younger people in the countryside. So here is that feature, and here's my first interview for the feature with Nicola Palfrey.
Meet the young farmer. Meet the young farmer.
One of the new features on the show is all about profiling young farmers and members of the young farmers clubs. And I know I have to point out at this point that you don't have to be from a farming background to be a young farmer or be a member of young farmers. Anyway, my first guest for this feature is Nicola Palfrey, who is a rural surveyor with Castor Jonas and the NFYFC representative on the Tenancy Reform Industry Group. Nicola, thanks for coming on the show, and thanks for being a bit of a guinea pig as the first person to be on this feature. How are things now? How is life in Corona? I know that you've had to postpone your wedding.
Yes, so in terms of lockdown, I've actually moved back to my parents' farm in Devon, and am now working from home. I'm a surveyor for Castor Jonas. And then in terms of personally, we were meant to be getting married on the 13th of June, but COVID-19 has put pay to that. So we have now rearranged until May next year. So a lot longer to plan and get things organised. And it's sun shining here, so we can't really complain.
We've actually just both finished watching a CLA debate about the future of farming, which there was a lot in. That was about where we'll be in 2050. And I thought we'd actually start with that. I mean, what was your take on it? And I wonder if you could summarise some of the key things that you took out of it.
Yeah, it's a really interesting debate, which kindly Barclays and Castor Jonas were sponsoring. And it was interesting in the fact that it was taking so many different perspectives. So we had obviously somebody speaking from Barclays and along with the policy from CLA, and Castor Jonas along with Vegan Society.
Quite a mix.
Pasture. Huge mix. We have got a lot of challenges coming along the line, and having the Vegan Society there and them saying about how apparently 1 to 2% of are vegans in the UK now. It is an interesting statistic, but it was quite interesting also to hear how actually pasture fed doesn't at the moment mean pasture fed is 51%, whereas they're now trying to get that changed to 100%.
Yep.
And hopefully that is going to increase, especially with COVID-19, everyone's saying how farm shops are actually massively benefiting from it because people are buying local, and that's obviously helping British farming, although the supermarkets are obviously being affected.
So tell listeners who don't know what a rural surveyor does day to day.
Okay, it's always a very hard question to answer is what is a rural surveyor, but basically we advise on rural property matters and agricultural matters. I myself am a chartered surveyor through the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors and an agricultural valuer with the CAV, which is the Central Association of Agricultural Valuers. But day to day, I basically do professional matters. We always call it the bucket in work. But basically, the range of what I do is estate management, rural planning, a bit of compulsory purchase where it's affecting farmland mainly. Basic payment scheme at the moment is very topical given 15th of May.
Busy time.
15th of June. Countryside stewardship grants and valuations, I suppose, for banks or for taxation purposes. And I'm also an agent for the AMC, the Agricultural Mortgage Corporation.
And how did you get into your position, and why did you want to go into rural surveying in the first place?
So I'm a farmer's daughter, so went to do something that I wanted to be outside. I didn't want to be sat in an office all day, and this seemed quite a good combination of the two, that I am office-based some of the time, but also I get to go out on farms and have a look around. So I did A-levels and then went on to the Royal Agricultural University, where I studied rural land management for 3 years, and then had to go and do 2 years training whilst on the job, which I did in Cornwall, and then qualified both for RACS and CAEV before moving back to Taunton and working for Cardiff Jonas.
What advice would you give to someone who's looking to sort of follow in those footsteps and do similar sort of thing?
Study hard is probably a good start, but also getting good experience. I was really lucky to get a lot of work experience. I actually went and looked and did agronomy as well, and just getting that broad range of experience across all the sectors, because you never know what you're going to go out and see on a farm, and everybody has their own ways of doing things, but also all the different sectors. And I've been very fortunate to be in touch with a lot of the sectors, but there's always a day that you go out and you always learn something new.
As this is the first time we've tried Meet the Young Farmer here on the podcast, I wonder if you can have the responsibility of just telling people what YFC is all about, and perhaps how you first got involved.
Okay. So it's one of the largest youth organisations in the UK, and it's dedicated to young people who have a love for agriculture and rural life, essentially. To be a young farmer, technically, the age range is between 10 and 26. Dare I say I'm over that?
Yeah, I think quite a few people are.
I'm still involved, and that's the age that you can compete in the national competitions, but you can still very much still be involved past that, as am I. How I joined, we've got a local club here called Whiffley Young Farmers, and to be fair, both my parents were members. And so when I actually turned 14, decided to join and get involved. And they were particularly active in entertainments, which was putting on production, and also sport, which was great things to be getting involved in at that age, and getting to know other neighbouring farmers' children around the area. So, and you don't need to be from the countryside to get involved in young farmers. As long as you have a love for the countryside and love for rural life, you can get involved.
Now, with a topical question about COVID-19, what impact is coronavirus having on YFC this year? Because I'm guessing, lots of things have been shut down, haven't they?
Yeah, unfortunately, it is having a huge impact, but as is everything in our whole daily life,
Exactly.
Going to the supermarket is now problematic. But the way young farmers have adapted is just brilliant, because it's the younger generation that unfortunately have the technology to be able to get involved quicker. So as many of us didn't know what Zoom was before, we all seem to be very adapted to using Zoom now. And a lot of meetings are happening virtually. I'm on the Agri Committee for National, and we are now having fortnightly Agri meetings through Zoom, which we meet more now than we ever have, which is great, because there's things obviously in the agricultural industry changing daily, and it's good to be kept in touch with what's going on and how we can have an influence. But also our national chair has been brilliant in bringing forward the Young Farmers Isolation Challenges, which they now put on every week, and he comes on a Friday evening to know what the next week's challenge is going to be, and that has created something for everybody to be getting involved in, despite not having your weekly Young Farmers meetings or whatever it may be.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely brilliant, isn't it? there are other projects as well. Like the rural youth projects, co-videos. That's another thing that's going on at the moment. What advice would you give to young people in the countryside or not in the countryside, I suppose, who just might be feeling a bit isolated right now?
Well, definitely have a look at the National Federation of Young Farmers website, which is NFYFC.org.uk. And there is YFC at Home, which has been solely created for COVID-19, which has loads of things that you can get involved in there. But also look at your local county's website. And they are also putting out a number of brilliant initiatives. For example, Devon Young Farmers have just done stock judging and their calf show through remotely, virtually, as well as other counties doing their own virtual shows and things like that, because unfortunately a lot of the agricultural shows have all been cancelled for this summer.
Nicola, thanks so much for coming on the show, especially being the first to jump into the Lions pit in this new feature and represent YFC. I'm hoping to speak to lots more YFC members over the coming months. But thanks for coming on, and have a great rest of your day.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Ben.
Meet the young farmer. Meet the young farmer.
Nicola Palfrey. That's it for today's show. Please subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you're listening so you never miss another episode. You can find the full-length interviews with both Andrew and Nicola on YouTube. Just search for Meet the Farmers podcast. I'm Ben Eagle, this has been Meet the Farmers, and I'll see you next week.